watching Numbskull News, and today I want to talk about Stanford and Cal possibly joining the Big Ten. However, let me start with some rumors. First of all, let's address this Fresno State talking to the Big 12 BS. And yes, I'm sure they have picked up the phone and called the Big 12 hotline and maybe even talked to Commissioner Yormark. But what does that really mean? The dude on locked on Big 12, I think his name is Josh Neighbors. Now, he did a great job breaking this thing down. I suggest you check out the Locked On Big 12 network. It's really good. Josh Neighbors is good. But Fresno State is trying like hell to get some kind of proposition passed in California where they would get a crap ton of money from the state to renovate, their field, renovate their athletic facilities, and which basically tells you that they're not ready for the big time. They're not ready for a Power 5 move. And it seems like they're kind of using the Big 12, or they've, talked to the Big 12 kind of crap to get that thing passed. Like, oh, there's a chance Fresno State's going to the Big 12. Well, I'm here to tell you there's not a chance in hell they're going to the Big 12. And chances are they'll never go to the Big 12. There's probably 30 programs in the entire nation, athletic programs, schools, that are ahead on the list, well ahead of Fresno State. It's just never going to happen. They don't have a brand. Outside of the valley over there, outside of Fresno State does not have any kind of a brand that really, the Big 12 would consider of use. And this is not me trying to be arrogant or prideful, like the Pac-12 is. It's just business. It's nothing personal. All the luck in the world to Fresno State in the future, but the future is not going to be with the Big 12. It's just, does it make any logical business sense for the Big 12 to do that at all? Next rumor, and yes, it's just a rumor, San Diego State to the Pac-12. Well, this makes logical sense. I mean, look at where they are in San Diego, Southern California. Now Southern California for the Pac-12 is a ghost town. They don't have any representation down there. Makes a ton of sense for them to do that. It made a ton of sense to do this like in September, maybe even as late as October, to officially invite and accept San Diego State into the Pac-12 fold. And then, if it's SMU or Boise State or whomever else, to get back to 12 teams, they should have done that a long time ago. Now, there's a big reason why they didn't. And it's a reason they're not going to talk about, they're not going to say out in public. But remember, in the Big 12, Texas and OU leaves, we're down to 8 remaining schools. Once those 8 remaining schools find out that there's no landing spot for them in any other Power 5 conference, they coalesce. They said, okay, we're in this shit together. Let's go full steam ahead. Invited 4 schools to come in. And those initial 8 teams, schools, had to give up money to get BYU, to get Houston, to get Cincinnati and UCF. They had to give up a good chunk of money to bring those schools in and have them be here in 2023. So they had to give up money to do that. I'm not saying all Pac-10 schools were not willing to give up money for San Diego State or SMU or whoever, but I guarantee you Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal are absolutely unwilling to give up money for that. I mean, they are the big dogs of the conference. Despite all of Utah's success they've had, they are not a big dog. They don't have any kind of big say in what goes on in that conference. Those 4 schools, Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal, they run that show. They're the most powerful schools left, period. It sounds weird for me to throw Cal in there, but if academics is really that important, they are a big academic power. Not an athletic power by any stretch, but academically, they're elite. And Stanford speaks for itself. So yeah, those are the four main programs there that are running the show, and they're not going to give up money. It's like USC and UCLA. They weren't going to let BYU come in. They weren't going to lose $1 while they still had to be playing games in the Pac-12. Not $1 they were going to give up. So is this going to happen? I don't see how. I really don't, because if somehow you miracle a deal with ESPN for a low ball offer, you think they're going to give you more money for San Diego State? No. Not if they only want a game a week and maybe one for the app. They don't want San Diego State. They don't want SMU or Boise State. They're not going to give you money for that. You think Amazon's going to give you money for that? They're going to look right. They're going to talk to the people at ESPN. They only want a game of the week. They don't want a Friday night game of the week with San Diego State. They want Oregon. They want Washington. They want Utah. They want, bigger brands for that game of the week. They don't want San Diego State. Well, what about Apple TV? Would they give you money for that? Maybe. I will give you that. There's a maybe with Apple TV that they would want more inventory. Maybe. But really, if I'm Apple TV and I'm going to give you $30 million per school for the 10 schools, $300 million, like, okay, now if you want to add schools, group of 5 schools, y'all pony up the money for that. We're not going to do that. That makes so maybe what I'm saying is they won't do that. I think they could theoretically offer somewhere around $280-300 million a year from Apple TV, but they're not going to give you an extra. They're not going to make it 330 or 360 because you added 2 group of 5s. They're not going to do that at all. They're going to push back production costs of every game on you, and if you want to add teams, you're going to pay for that. If you want another 20 ounce of Gatorade, they'll make you pay for that too. That's what Apple does. They're going to push off all the cost on you as possible. And if they feel they're losing money, trust me, it'll be written in the contract. If 2 or 3 years down the road, on a 5 or 7 year deal with Apple, if they feel they're losing their ass on this, they will have an out clause. They'll get out of that and then leave you out to dry in a second. It's Apple. They don't care about the Pac-12. Neither does ESPN. Neither does Amazon. Nobody cares about the Pac-12. They only care about what they can make money with. So let me get to the reason of the video. Stanford and Cal to the Big Ten. Look, everybody, me too, we've all been talking about Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten. Possibly, maybe, if they want it, right? But, I know personally, me and everybody else thought, if USC leaves the Pac-12, which they did, they would go with Oregon. But they got UCLA, which, it still puzzles me. And look, on my live stream I did, last weekend, one guy made a pretty decent point. He talked about, well, they want the Rose Bowl in the Big Ten. Okay, they want a stadium in the Big Ten. Oh, they want the bowl game. Maybe, I guess, but who are they going to play? I mean, it's not 2 Big Ten teams that are going to play. It's traditionally what? Big Ten and Pac-12? So I don't know how they're going to work that out. But if that's the sole reason, it's probably a combination of a lot of things. Again, I mean, you already got the main team from Southern California. But UCLA, that is a blue blood brand in basketball. So, my thought is, hey, you got 2 blue bloods. This one's in football, one's in basketball. Sure. And as far as Oregon and Washington goes, they're not a blue blood in anything right now. I mean, good brands, especially Oregon. It's a national brand. They get great ratings. They have a lot of success. They recruit out the ass. But, they're not a blue blood. You gotta put some trophies on the wall. You gotta have some championships to your name, and they don't. So I got to thinking, we could be wrong on that. It could be Stanford and Cal that is of interest to the Big Ten. Now, keep in mind, Stanford still gets pretty decent ratings. Cal, it depends on who they play, but no one really cares about Cal, not not athletically. However, with a move to the Big Ten, Cal would have plenty of money from their athletic department to start actually putting some good coaches out there, actually giving a shit, and they may be forced to give a crap if they're going to go to the Big Ten. Big Ten might say, look, man, y'all got to try. There's no more of this, well, we're academic schools and we kind of dally about with our athletics. No, no, no. You're going to get paid for your athletics. You're going to put money into it, and you got to take it seriously. So Cal could turn it around. I'm not saying they'd be some great team or anything, but at least be respectable. Stanford can definitely be respected. They're down right now, but they do invest money in their athletics. They're just not very good at the moment. Really, we need some reasons why the Big Ten would choose them over Oregon and Washington, right? Because you would think those are two of the better athletic brands, and they're definitely the biggest brands in football that the Pac-12 has. So why would they take Stanford and Cal? Well, I keep hearing all this shit about academics, right? There's billions of dollars in research money. Well, in the Pac-12, Stanford and Cal, those are your two biggest academic brands you have. So whatever big money that is getting issued to the Pac-12 because of academics, in terms of research money, grants, whatnot, it's because of Stanford and Cal. So if you ask maybe some of these chancellors, some of these presidents in the Big Ten and say, hey, would you like Stanford and Cal to come in? And look, I've heard people say, well, look, they already got Purdue, they already got Northwestern, they don't want some other teams to come in. Keep this in mind. Purdue is important because if this academic thing is right, I can only imagine the kind of money Northwestern and Purdue bring in academically to the conference in terms of grant money. Stanford and Cal would be a boom. Like it's like, oh, here's another shit ton of money for the entire conference and sharing research revenue. So that, as far as academically, money wise, makes a lot of sense. You're talking about the Bay Area. So huge market. Now I know everyone's saying, well, markets don't really matter right now. Well, they matter to the Big Ten. Just look at the teams they've added over the years and who's in the Big Ten. You're talking about the biggest media markets in the country. Stanford and Cal represent a massive, and I do mean massive, media market. Oakland, San Francisco, San Jose, uh, the entire Silicon Valley crap right there. That's immense. That's a lot of people. Now I understand, does Cal fill up the football stadium? No. But if they're playing USC and UCLA on a regular basis, if they have, I don't know, Ohio State comes into town, or Michigan comes into town, or the Cornhuskers come into town, or Wisconsin, you might you might fill up that stadium. I think UCLA, they've always had trouble filling the Rose Bowl, but I don't think they're going to have a whole lot of trouble in the Big Ten. I think they're going to make a tremendous amount of money at the gate when Michigan State comes to town, when Penn State comes to town. And I think the same will be true for those Northern California schools. So for the Big Ten, you'd basically have all of California on lock, except for San Diego State or Fresno State. Excuse me. We forgot about them too. I don't think the Big Ten gives two shits about those two. But to have LA and to have San Francisco, have that entire Bay Area, that I think that would be something very appealing to the Big Ten. Another thing that is just a rumor, people throwing the shit out there. Uh, on one hand, you have people saying USC does not want Oregon in the Big Ten because they basically own California right now in terms of recruiting. They don't want to have to deal. They already have to deal with Oregon in terms of recruiting. But USC, especially with the move to the Big Ten, they are going to be a juggernaut in recruiting. They'll get whoever they want out of their state. The only team they really have to contend with is Oregon. So they may not want Oregon to go to the Big Ten and become a problem with recruiting. Give them, another weapon to recruit against USC. And with Stanford and Cal, you kind of don't have to worry about that. You really don't. USC will still be the kings of California. If that's even a thing, which I don't know. There's other people that seem to think USC is trying to get Oregon in, which I don't know that they're trying to block them or get them in. But I know if recruiting is any kind of an issue for USC and the teams that are going to go to the Big Ten, Stanford and Cal is probably the optimal option for USC. People have made the point about Stanford before, having this rivalry, and they always play Notre Dame. Does it hurt? I don't know how much stock you need to put into that as far as, the Big Ten one day, because their ultimate wet dream is to get Notre Dame into the Big Ten. Lock, stock, and barrel, all sports. But especially in football. But, I don't think Notre Dame's in any hurry. And just because you brought in Stanford, is that going to really change anything? No. I mean, they play Big Ten teams all the time. I don't think they give two shits about that. I mean, they played Cincinnati a couple of years ago and lost to them. So I don't know. They just like to build their own schedule. And, look, I think they really like to play Stanford, and that's probably not going to change ever. But is that really going to help Notre Dame go to the Big Ten? No. But maybe that's still something that helps. Although I don't consider that a big part of it. So if the Big Ten decide they're going to possibly take two more teams from the Pac-12, it may, and don't be shocked, it may be Stanford and Cal. Like I said, that wouldn't be my choice, but I'm not a Big Ten guy. I'm not running the conference. I'm not in line to be the commissioner. I don't have an interview. But it may be more of the off-the-field advantages of having Stanford and Cal that would be appealing to the Big Ten. So the money shortfall, right? Because with Oregon, they don't make it. They're not worth enough money. There's still a money gap between them and the Big Ten. That's why they haven't already been invited. Same thing with Washington. And of course, Stanford and Cal. I mean, the gap may even be a little bit wider. But here's the deal. That's the athletic money gap. And the Big Ten may just say, look, like I said, if the research money is really that enormous, and Stanford and Cal really, they're the ones that are really floating the Pac-12. This is why Utah doesn't want to leave the Pac-12, because their association with Stanford. If they're really that valuable, then it would make sense for the Big Ten to say, look, maybe we have to give up a few million to have these two schools come in, but we're going to gain a lot more than just that little bit of athletic money, because of the academic money that's going to be a big windfall coming into the conference. So if you're weighing things, and if those presidents are anything like some of the Pac-12 guys, they may understand what that means to have Stanford and Cal in the conference and getting that academic money. Because bottom line is, if you got to give up $8 million a year for those two schools to come in, per team, and let's say they add, 10, 12 million a year because of the academics, then it's a simple math equation. If the academics are really, really that valuable and there's that much money, if the academics really outweigh the athletics as far as money goes, then that's a no-brainer. You give up a little bit here, but you're going to gain way more over here, over there. Okay, I can see it. I can see that possibly happening. Well, Stanford and Cal makes sense, if you want to have running buddies with USC. And really, it's not even about football. That's overblown when it comes to football. There's so much money in football. The travel, so what? Oh, well, all these kids, all these poor kids. What? You're on a plane for an extra hour or two? Is that really going to change your life? Is that going to put you in some kind of depressive state where you're going to leap off a building or some crap? No, that's dumb. Everyone that's some overblown shit. What's not overblown is some of your smaller sports. Whether it's lacrosse or water polo, softball, baseball. The non-revenue sports, the Olympic sports, track and field. And even with that, a lot of that's overblown. Because when in track and field, when they have meets, it's literally, tons of schools, like a ton of representation, if not every school in the conference, going to multiple different locations and having different meets at different times. It's not like football where it's like one school going to play one school. No, it's like all of them coming together and having, a track and field event. So the travel there is kind of doesn't matter. Baseball and even basketball might be a little tough. That's a little bit more. It's more games, more travel. So you're going greater distances more often. I can see it with those guys being a little tough. And I can see the want to add a couple more Western teams for that. That way you don't have just USC and UCLA out on an island. In a lot of ways, it makes sense. I still have my doubts. I still have a lot of doubts about it. Like I said, about the Big Ten adding anybody else from the pack. But if they do, don't be shocked if it's Stanford and Cal and not Oregon and Washington. Anyway, that's all I got for this crap. I'll be back with some other crap later. Bye.